I am a big fan of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. My jumping on point with the band was during the Stadium Arcadium era, when I heard Danny California for the first time when I was in high school. Their single, Snow, Heyo, is the song I listen to on my birthday every year. Every MP3 I have ever bought has 70% Red Hot Chili Pepper songs. I have bought every single one of their albums. I have the bios of Anthony Kiedis and Flea, who is my second favorite bassist of all time, and is one of the reasons as to why I bought a bass guitar in the first place. In 2019, I dedicated the entire month of June to the Chili Peppers by doing the music video show and looking at their videos and vlogs talking about their songs, commemorating the 20th anniversary of the band's comeback album, Californication. Suffice to say, I am a bit of a fan, so naturally, I am going to have a little bit of an opinion. I know that some albums I like better than others, but there are some hidden gems in their discography, and most Red Hot Chili Pepper fans know which album I want to talk about. But it's not. I want to look at an album that has been overlooked for years after it was released, to the point where it seemed like it was cast to the wayside like One Hot Minute. However, unlike One Hot Minute, it has yet to be vindicated by history. Hopefully this video will change this. Stadium Arcadium was released in 2006, which included 5 hit singles and went triple platinum in the US, selling over 7 million copies worldwide. It was the first album by the band that went to number 1 in not just the US, but the Canadian album charts, the Australian music charts, and the UK music charts. The band then embarked on a world tour to promote it, which ended after 132 shows going on for over a year. And then, nothing. It was very surprising since a band like the Chili Peppers would be going non-stop with little to no break. And then there was another surprise. John Frusciante left the band in July 2009, but there was no announcement until December 2009. Replacing John was his friend and musical collaborator Josh Klinghoffer, who toured with the band as an extra guitarist during the last legs of the Stadium Arcadium tour. The replacement guitarist announcement wasn't confirmed until February of 2010. And with this new energy, the band went to the studio, wrote about 60 songs, which took 9 months to write, and on August 26, 2011, the band released their 10th studio album, I'm With You. The reception was good, just good. The consensus was that the album was okay, but one couldn't help but wonder about the major change in the lineup and how it changed the sound of the band. And then, after a tour promoting the album, which consisted of 136 shows spanning a year and a half, not to mention the band celebrating their 30th anniversary together, nothing. No one talks about this album after all these years. On some radio stations, they'll play music from their last 3 albums and Blood Sugar Sex Magik, but nothing from I'm With You. Sure, there are people who will stick up for this album, but why does this album get the shaft? Why don't more people talk about what is turning out to be a very underrated album? Well, there are a few reasons why. First, it may have been a change in sound. Now, the band have never made the same album twice. Listen to any 2 Chili Peppers albums and you can see this. Some songs may sound similar, but no album does. Even their first 3 albums sound completely different from each other. Listen to any era of their music and you can see that there is a difference between the band in the 80s and in the 90s. They have delved into rock, funk, metal, reggae, punk, alt-rock, hard rock, psychedelic. These guys shift gears so much that I'm surprised that they didn't accidentally start more than a dozen genres. But they are always staying true to themselves with the same Chili Pepper energy. So, when I purchased I'm With You, I expected a change in sound because they are a band who go in totally different directions after each release. And to be honest, it wasn't a sound that was completely out of the norm. It was kind of where Stadium Arcadium left off. The funk was there, but it was a little less obvious than it was on Stadium. In fact, how the band created the album was different. While they are known for jam sessions to feel things out for a song, this time, according to Anthony Kiedis, there was a decent amount of songs in the album that were planned out. That and Flea, who studied music theory during the band's hiatus, said that he was listening to the Rolling Stones and Bach during the creation of this album. Whether or not this has affected the band's sound during this album may vary, but perhaps this slight change in sound was a little bit dry. Like the band was slowing down as they were entering their third decade together. Like the spark they had was gone, which is not true. Listen to songs like Monarchy of Roses, Did I Let You Know, and Look Around, and you'll see the energy had never gone away. It's different because of the way it was recorded, again, less jamming, more writing. Maybe it was different because of the changing guitarists. John Frusciante is considered the band's leading creative force, even if it gets a little much sometimes. He has steered the band in a direction that seems a little more focused. He had been playing guitar since he was a kid, and he was considered somewhat of a prodigy. Even in his darker periods, he always put out interesting music, more avant-garde. Keys himself said that making music was easier to make with John than even with original guitarist Hillel Slovak. He had set such a high bar for anyone who would replace him that the replacement themselves would be considered subpar compared to John, and it would affect the band's sales, and that is totally unfair to Josh. Josh was a friend of John's who played with John, but he is not John. It's good that he doesn't exactly follow John's example on this album. He does play with emotion like John does, but he comes from a love of funk and jazz. Looking back, I think Josh was not in the best position when he joined, simply because he wasn't John. And who could be John? If he tried to be like his friend, people would say that he was trying to be John. I think it was smart that Josh did his own thing, and there are people like me who will stick up for him because John was a tough act to follow, which is kind of another reason why this album isn't talked about enough. Look at the last 3 albums that the band has done before this. This is a career boost if I ever saw one. When John came back in the late 90s, there was this creative burst that he led. Californication went into a lighter and softer direction that showed their maturity, and ditching their frat boy elements that, for the most part, was disappearing by the time One Hot Minute was released. By the Way showed them going further into that lighter and softer direction, but their funk influence was further into the background and sounded a lot more like the band took a breath and took a risk with a sound that they never went for before. And Stadium Arcadium was a double disc album that had the band members firing on all cylinders, and it may have been the most ambitious effort by the band. And these albums made big numbers. And these albums felt big and filling to the ears. I'm With You had a tough act to follow, and, to be honest, it felt so small in comparison. The guitars change was what was noticeable, but the album felt less like a big thing and more like a small show at a venue. And the Chili Peppers were known to be bigger than life, until Californication when they became more seasoned and mature, so I can see where the tough acts to follow come from. I'm With You had to follow 3 blockbusters, and on top of that, an album that had been vindicated by history, and another album that broke the band into the mainstream. So of course I'm With You would fall short of expectations for a fair share of fans. It's because the legacy of the Chili Peppers is all leading up to this kind of smaller album, and it was because of that it only sold 2 million copies, though it was released during a time when rock music wasn't the powerhouse that rap is in the year of 2011. In fact, that may have been another reason as to why the album was less talked about, the time when it was released. As I mentioned in my Danger Days video, the reason why the MCR album was not a runaway success was because it was released when rock was not a huge genre compared to hip-hop and R&B. It felt that modern rock went into a safer, softer route even when it wasn't. Hip-hop was more of an edgier version of what rock was even back in the 90s. So by the time I'm With You was released in 2011, rock music and album sales did suffer. So whether or not the album's reception was positive or negative, I'm With You would have been buried by what was going on at the time, and the Chili Peppers were not as popular as they were in the 90s or even the 2000s. They were still popular, but through no fault of their own, this album was not what the music scene was looking for. I'm With You has never been a bad album. Is it flawed? Yes. But what Chili Peppers album isn't? Blood Sugar Sex Magic gets too frat boy at times. One Hot Minute had weird moments like pee, and it stands out in the worst possible way. Californication had loud compression. By the Way had moments of having the bass guitar a little too far in the background, and Stadium Arcadium had moments where you could cut out a few things here and there. But none of these are bad albums, let's be clear. For me, I'm With You is Stadium Arcadium, except half as long and with a different guitarist. There are lulls in it like Stadium Arcadium, but it is still undeniably Chili Peppers. They have changed their styles on each album, and they will keep doing it in the future. I'm With You is like a fine wine. It gets better with age. Take a listen to it later. I promise you that it is far better than you remember it.